I'm going to talk that the dead rec dilemma, or rec is stands for job order. So not all job orders are created equal, right? So how do you spot the ones that aren't going to leave you spinning your wheels, right? This is obviously geared towards agency recruiters, but if you're corporate, this matters too, right? You have, I know a lot of you corporate recruiters out there have 100 roles to work on, so you got to be able to prioritize which ones are actually going to close, right, to hit your own numbers. But we'll talk on the agency side for this segment because that's my background. So again, if a company can't explain their reasons why an ideal hire, right? Oh, they list all these must-haves, but then you ask them, well, why is someone want to work here, right? Why? What are the three reasons this perfect candidate's going to take this job? Right? You think about, say, software developers or people in construction, right? They're in demand, or accountants, they're in demand. You got to be convince them, right? And they got to believe that this is an opportunity worth taking from them, right? Making the jump. Having unrealistic expectations. The biggest one could be low compensation, but they want the best of the best, and there's no compromise. There's no wiggle room. It's going to be hard to work with someone like that. One of the recent ones, another example I had recently with a client, was companies that want a longer guarantee period. In of itself may or may not be a red flag, but you always want to dig in. And so she dug in with this prospect. They were using agencies, they were on contract, they wanted to go more direct hire, but they were really stuck on pushing back the guarantee period. And she kind of kept digging in. And the manager was talking about, well, people get here and maybe they feel like it wasn't what that was promised, and to kind of leave. So she started to pick out maybe it's a toxic work environment. Well, she didn't want to waste her time or waste her candidate's time or her reputation, right? So she kept digging versus just succumbing, just saying, okay, well, I'll do a longer guarantee period because I need the business. Now she's a digital recruiter client, so she has an abundant pipeline, so she can walk away, and that's exactly what she did. And so she can save herself hours of time. And now she also has a company that might not have a great work environment, could be a great place to pull candidates from that might be to a better client. So again, walking away isn't a bad thing. You just have to have the infrastructure and the pipeline, obviously, to feel confident that you can. Um, but yeah, I think you guys ever walked away from a seemingly great opportunity?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's a couple things I want to chime in here. First of all, let's talk about red flags as agency recruiters and contingency deals, right?
Yeah.
Um, I a lot of companies, a lot of staffing companies use the guarantee period as a negotiation lever. For me, that doesn't work for me because there really has to be a balance on all sides responsibility of a company to onboard properly.
Yep.
We as recruiters bring you the talent. We vet them as much as possible, but ultimately it's your decision as a company who's making the hiring decision to say yes or no, do you want to hire them? And are we going to onboard and train them properly, right? So that part's out of my control. Once you hire them and they start in your company, I am hands off. So how is it my responsibility to ensure that they stay for X period of time? So what I do is, depending on the guarantee period, right? It's either going to be 60 or 90 days. I also do not ever offer a refund. I offer a replacement. And those are my terms. Otherwise, what you're doing is basically you're trying to, and I learned this early on in my career. I had my first contingency deal 85 days into a 90-day period, let go, and then we had to give the money back because it was a crappy deal, right? I didn't write the contract for that one. It was basically like they were trying before they buy, because what's the risk then?
There's none.
Yeah, screw it. F
There's
it.
none. So
Moving
I
on.
completely with you. Joel, what do you
I,
got?
I look.
Right.
I think just in general in business, walking away is a superpower, and I know that walking away is really hard. But I've actually found that if you walk away, even in a sales process, you become more desirable, and it's this weird thing that happens. Like when you
Hmm.
tell people no, it's like they want to work with you even more, even more. All right, but I think that walking away from difficult business is probably the best decision you can make because if you get caught up, especially if you're a solo 360 recruiter and you're managing BD and you're
Hmm.
managing filling racks, you get one difficult client that takes up 80% of your time. You're losing on it every single time. So you've got to think,
Yep.
at the end of the day, am I going to be more productive wasting hours with this person? Because for me, like that's multiple red flags. There's
Hmm.
can't make a decision, keep wanting to move people through the process, like terrible communication. It's actually one of the reasons why, because a lot of times people jump to, well, just get them on a retainer. And I'm like, that's not always a solution.
No.
Sometimes a
You're trapped then. You're
contingency,
stuck.
yeah, exactly. A
You have
contingency
to
deal
deliver.
can be a good way to vet out potential clients as well, because for the recruiter, it's zero risk. And it's something that isn't talked about a lot, because a lot right now, there's a lot of people
Right.
who are pushing retainers and saying, well, if you get the money down, then it works out best for you.
They could be an
No,
awful client. They could be an awful client. Now you start trying to
exactly.
fill a role, and then you're getting the pressure from the client. Why aren't you even filled it? Why haven't we seen it? And then you push back on them, and you throw all the red flags back in their face. Then they push it back to you. Well, you're not delivering the right, candidates. Like, you're not giving me the right feedback, and it turns into a he said, she said, and it sucks.
Exactly, and I think, to me, it's less to do with how you structure the deal, more to do with the just the relationship and how easy the person
Hmm.
is. It's the same if I'm doing a branding deal, if I'm doing a recruiting deal, whatever type of deal I'm doing. If the person's difficult to work with, I don't really care how much money is on the table, unless it's like unless it's a massive amount of money,
$1 million.
right? But it's like, how often does that happen? If it's gonna suck a ton of my time and it's gonna actually take away from other clients that could be better long-term clients, I'm gonna walk away. And so you've got to weigh up: are they difficult to work with? Is this even a long-term relationship that I want or I see? And that's what you should be fighting for, the long-term
Yep.
relationships always in recruitment. Because if you don't have that relationship, I don't care if you send them the best candidate in the world, if they're not really bought into your process, it's very, very hard to close and collect the money in the end, and you just end up going through a real nightmare scenario. So I think for particularly contingent recruiters, you gotta really, really be smart about who you work
Dial
with.
in.
Dial in,
Dial in. What say you,
dial
Clark?
in.
Your segment.
That's why you guys are the experts. No, I think it's great for people to hear from you guys, because that is the difference. That's the make or break. I think one of the questions I get after that is, okay, well, how do I get my confidence there, or how do I speak up? It's understand your value proposition. Like, why are you doing this? What value are you bringing to the table? For some recruiters, the tough answer is like there isn't a ton of value, right? Maybe you're more of
Well,
a generalist. You don't have the experience. Like, you have to actually kind of have the self-awareness to know. And some people start with lower rates, and some veteran recruiters bash on them. I don't mind if you got to get in your door get in the
right.
door somehow and work your way up, build that confidence,
Well,
build up your value in the market. And sometimes that's the route you have to go. But even when you're starting out, one good client is going to be obviously way better than one bad client. Like, do the work to get that one good client versus just the low hanging fruit for one bad client. And you're going to probably still never get paid, and you just wasted 3, 6, 9 months potentially.
yeah, the other X factor too is I'm always asking, and I wasn't necessarily able to do this when I started in recruiting a decade ago, but now I'm at a point too where I won't really take a contingency deal if they're working with other outside recruiters. I don't want to swim in the ocean, with the same
Exclusivity is huge.
exclusivity, but I use exclusivity as a negotiation lever also, where either I'll move those other levers, I could drop a point or two for exclusivity, and I also negotiate exclusivity for a certain period of time if they push back, right? So you have all these levers that you could have. I start big. I go, give me exclusivity. I'll drop a point or two on the fee, or I'll give you an extra 30 days on the replacement refund, whatever you want to call it. And then if they push back on that, I could say, okay, well, give me exclusivity for 60 days. Give me the first take at it. Exclusivity aside from any organic inbound applications. Let's caveat that.
Guys, this is really where brand comes into play, because if people perceive that your brand is valuable, then you don't need to say, well, here's my value proposition. They're already thinking,
They
wow, this
know it.
person's valuable. And this is where, like, building your brand in a way that's strategic, where you are valuable already going into the conversation, is huge. And so I know a couple of
Huge.
recruiters. I know more than a couple of recruiters. I know a lot of recruiters who, they have a strong brand on social media. They're featured in magazines, or they've got a podcast. They've got something that shows credibility and value. It goes a lot way. I think you
Like us.
struggle. You struggle if you go into the conversation and they didn't come inbound, or they don't know you, or they don't know who you are. I think that's where you could struggle to bring in the value. And again, like, brand isn't always online. Like, if you are like a recruiter that's well known within your industry offline, that can work as well. But that's why I'm always thinking about, like, what is your brand? Like, what are you known for? And if they know your brand, if they know that you are the top recruiter, you're the one who's placing people, it goes a long way. And even if you're junior, like, that's why you could start building some sort of credibility, some sort of
Right.
awareness of who you are online. You don't need to be 20 years in the industry to do that. And then it's a case of, you've got to be confident when you pitch that. One of the things I say is, like, look, I say, look, I'll have a higher fee for contingency. If you want to put a little bit of money down, I'll work on, like, a container retainer agreement. And then when they say, well, what's that for? I say, look, because I value my time. You might not value it, but I value it. And I value it so much that I'm willing to walk away from you right now. And you start speaking like that, people go, whoa, all right, this guy's not just desperate for my business. And I think if you go in there desperate, and we all know it's a tough market, but if you go in there desperate, people sniff that out, and then they put you lower down on the value scale. Whereas if you just stick to your gun and say no, you can always follow up in a week and say, hey, how's that position going? Is it still filled? No, it isn't. All right, well, let's revisit this. And so just thinking a little bit more strategic. But that's my advice for people. Like, know your own value, be able to articulate it, be bold.
Dropping gems, as the comment section is saying. So we have one question: is any advice for hiring volunteer positions? And I'll quickly say, for me, find the people that are aligned with that mission. I mean, if you have like a adopt a dog center, adopting pets, go to the veterinary school, right, and all that stuff. Like, just go find people that are aligned with that mission, because again, if they're going to work for free, that would be that's what you want to look for.
I dig it.
Love it.
Cool.
All right, cool. Clark, where can folks find you?
digitalrecruiter.io. Check me out on LinkedIn, Clark Willcox, with 2 L's in Willcox. And connect, shoot me a message. Say what's up.
Cool. Good. Hot take. Favorite Thanksgiving dish?
Stuffing.
Okay, great.